As the icy water engulfed me, I was certain my life was over. But instead of darkness, I was pulled into a realm beyond comprehension, a place where eternal light shimmered. And the creator of the universe stood before me. In that timeless moment, he poured into me profound truths about pure love, the power of choice, and the eternal purpose of life. Join this channel to experience a journey that defies death itself, where the creator delivered messages that changed everything. This story will stir your soul and open your eyes to the deeper meaning of existence. My name is Donna, and I've spent most of my life working as a professor and acupuncturist. I've always been drawn to the outdoors, and my happiest memories often involve nature, the smell of fresh pine, the stillness of a lake at dawn, the laughter of family during summer adventures. I never imagined that one of these cherished moments would lead me to an encounter that forever changed how I see life, death, and the meaning of existence. It was a beautiful summer day in 1998, and my family and I were vacationing in a cabin near Lake Tahoe. The lake was our playground. We spent hours fishing, water skiing, and using what we affectionately called the lake toy, a large inflatable raft designed for being pulled behind a boat. My brother-in-law, ever the thrill seeker, loved spinning us around on the water, making us laugh and scream as we clung to the raft for dear life. That day was no different. Everything felt so normal, so blissfully routine. But life has a way of changing in an instant. We had just finished a round of fun on the lake toy and were climbing back onto the boat when my brother-in-law yelled, "Get off the bullet! The boat is sinking!" His voice was sharp, urgent, and completely unexpected. I looked around, confused. The boat wasn't supposed to take on water. It had a device installed to prevent such a thing. But there it was, sinking. In the chaos, my sister threw the tow rope aside, trying to free us from the raft. I glanced down and felt a chill run through me. The tow rope had wrapped tightly around my leg. That's impossible, I thought. Tow ropes float, they don't wrap around anything. Surely it was just an illusion. But as I moved, the pressure around my leg didn't budge. My brother-in-law couldn't see me because the raft, or as we called it, the bullet, blocked his view. Suddenly, I heard the twin-engine motor roar to life. Oh, this is going to hurt, I thought. Just before the boat took off, the rope tightened instantly, slicing into my leg with an excruciating force that felt like fire and ice colliding. The pain exploded in my head, and I was yanked underwater. The force of the water against my chest made it impossible to breathe. My lungs burned as they began to fill with water. I knew I was drowning. Panic surged. But alongside it came a strange, quiet certainty. This is how I'm going to die. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. As my physical body struggled and suffocated, my consciousness shifted. I felt myself separate from my body. One moment, I was submerged in cold, chaotic water. The next, I was somewhere entirely different. I passed through what I can only describe as a thin, saran wrap-like veil. On the other side, everything changed. The first thing I noticed was the absence of time. It's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't experienced it. But I knew instantly that I was in eternity. The constraints of minutes, hours, or even days no longer existed. Everything felt immediate, infinite, and overwhelmingly real. The second thing I noticed was a radiant presence, the creator of the universe. This presence wasn't a person or a figure, but an immense, living light, shimmering like the aurora borealis. It was beautiful, pure, and alive with colors that seemed to hum with energy. "You know everything," I thought in awe, and the response came instantly. Telepathically, "I know everything." The communication wasn't spoken, it was a direct transfer of knowledge. As if a tube of understanding was being sent straight into my mind. I learned that every choice we make matters, even our smallest. Most fleeting thoughts carry weight and energy that ripple through the universe. As I stood in the presence of this divine being, I felt a love so pure, so overwhelming, that it was unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't just love for me, it was love for everything, every soul, every grain of sand, every breath of wind. This love was the foundation of existence itself, and it bathed me in a blissful warmth that I never wanted to leave. "What would you like to do?" the Creator asked. It wasn't a command, but an invitation. I hesitated. The question felt vast, like it carried implications I couldn't fully grasp. Finally, I said, "You created me. I give the choice to you." The instant those words left me, I realized their weight. I had surrendered my free will. It wasn't regret, exactly, but a profound awareness of what it meant to trust completely. The Creator's response was immediate and kind, "Good answer." Then, as quickly as I had arrived, I felt myself falling back to earth. My consciousness snapped into my body, and I was overwhelmed by the sensation of pain and water-filled lungs. My brother-in-law, inexplicably compelled to stop the boat, had turned to see me entangled in the rope. He freed me, and I fought my way to the surface, gasping for air. Human hands, invisible yet unmistakably present, seemed to lift me upward. When I reached the surface, my sister swam toward me with a strength I didn't know she had. My leg was badly injured, nearly severed, but I was alive. Somehow, against all odds, I had survived. In the days and weeks that followed, I grappled with what had happened. The physical pain was immense, but it was nothing compared to the weight of the experience. I hadn't just survived an accident, I had touched eternity. The messages I received stayed with me, reshaping how I viewed every moment, every choice, and every connection in my life. What happened to me that day wasn't just a near-death experience. It was a glimpse into the infinite, a reminder of the profound love and purpose that underpins all of creation. And though I'm back in the world of time and pain, I carry with me the certainty of something greater, a truth that has changed me forever. The next thing I knew, I was being dragged underwater. The boat, the bullet, and myself, we were all in motion. My sister was back there, and later she would tell me, I was watching my husband kill my sister. She could see what was happening, but her focus, like my brother-in-law's, was on getting the boat to shore before it sank. After all, there was a baby on board. The force of the water was relentless. It hit my chest with such power that I could feel the air being squeezed out of me. I tried to hold on, to resist the pull of the water and the crushing force against my body. But it was futile. My air bubbles floated upward, and I watched them as they disappeared into the vastness above me. My mind began to race. I really could use some air, I thought, as though the thought alone might make it happen. But it didn't. The boat's engine roared, and the tow rope tightened further around my leg, pulling me deeper. All my education, all my strength, all my resolve, none of it could save me in this moment. There was nothing I could do. I was swallowing water now, each breathless gasp filling my lungs with liquid instead of air. My chest burned with an intensity I'd never known before. And then came the realization I was going to die. But it wasn't a realization filled with panic or anger. Instead, it was a calm, almost matter-of-fact understanding. There was a strange knowing, a surrender to what was happening. My thoughts drifted to practicalities. Where will they hold the funeral? I wondered. Will it be in Arizona or New York? The absurdity of the thought didn't register then. It was simply what my mind latched onto as my body gave in. And then, just like that, I separated from my body. One moment, I was drowning. The next, I was free. I felt myself slip through a veil, thin and transparent, like saran wrap. On the other side, everything was different. I was no longer bound by my physical form or the pain that had consumed it. Instead, I was in a space where time didn't exist, where everything felt immediate and infinite all at once. Oh my God, I thought. I'm dead. This is eternity. And yet, it didn't feel frightening. It felt astonishing, almost exhilarating. I had brought my consciousness with me, and that realization alone filled me with awe. It was as though every part of me, my mind, my spirit, my very essence was vibrating with energy. I looked down and saw something extraordinary, trillions of cells, each one like a tiny happy face, radiating joy and light. They giggled, and I couldn't help but laugh with them. What's going on? I asked, my curiosity overpowering any lingering confusion. And then I heard it. The cells in my body, or perhaps my being, were chanting in unison, "He's coming. He's coming. He's coming. Who's coming?" I wondered. And as I slowly looked upward, I felt it. If Earth was below me, then someone was rising from above. The presence grew stronger, closer, until it filled every part of the space around me. Oh my God, I whispered. It's the creator of the universe. There are no words adequate enough to describe what I saw and felt. The creator wasn't a man or a woman. There were no pronouns, no physical form. It was light, color, energy, a living, breathing aurora borealis. Waves of electric hues rippled and danced, radiating a love so profound it made me weep. I was face to face with the essence of everything, and it was glorious. The creator didn't speak with words. Instead, knowledge flowed into me telepathically, like a stream of information being transferred directly into my mind. It was seamless, instantaneous, and beyond anything I had ever experienced. It reminded me of those tubes at the drive-through bank. The message would arrive, unpack itself in my mind, and suddenly I would know. It was beautiful and overwhelming. Every thought I had, the Creator mirrored back. You know everything, I thought. And the reply came, I know everything. The vastness of this truth was staggering. I felt the expanse of eternity, of dimensions I couldn't even begin to comprehend. My understanding of existence, of time, of life itself, expanded infinitely in those moments. At one point, I looked back toward Earth. I wondered if the people I loved would be okay. Would they grieve me? How would they go on? But as soon as these thoughts formed, they were met with reassurance from another presence. One that wasn't the Creator but still carried authority and peace. Don't worry, it said. And when I turned my focus back to the Creator, Earth faded away entirely. It no longer existed in my consciousness. There was only the present moment, and it was all-encompassing. Then, as if to show me the magnitude of divine knowledge, the Creator said, I even know the number of grains of sand on a beach in New Zealand. And before I could even process the statement, I was there. My vision zoomed in on a single grain of sand, and I knew with absolute certainty the exact number of grains on that beach. In an instant, I was back in the Creator's presence, marveling at what had just happened. The Creator continued, I even know the number of hairs on your head. And in that moment, a wave of love and bliss swept through me. It wasn't just a concept, it was tangible, palpable, flowing through every part of my being. I felt as though I had a body again, though I knew I didn't. Love and light filled me, and I understood what true bliss meant. The Creator called me by a name I didn't recognize, one that transcended time and identity, a name that spoke to the core of who I was across millennia. I never wanted to leave. I was immersed in a space so perfect, so complete, that returning to anything less felt unimaginable. But then, the Creator asked me something unexpected. Donna, what would you like to do? I hesitated, the weight of the question sinking in. What would I like to do? The answer felt immeasurable, as if every choice in my life had been leading to this moment. I didn't want to make a mistake. I didn't want to leave this perfection. Finally, with all the trust one could muster, I said, You created me. I give the choice to you. The instant the words left my lips, I realized the depth of what I had just done. I had surrendered my will entirely. It wasn't regret, but a profound awareness of what it meant to trust so completely. And then, I heard the Creator's voice, calm and approving, good answer. Before I could process what was happening, I felt a shift. The space around me began to dissolve, and I started to fall. It wasn't a terrifying fall, but a gentle descent, as though unseen hands were guiding me back. The love and light that had enveloped me began to fade, replaced by the familiar sensation of weight and gravity. Suddenly, I was back in my body. I gasped as my lungs screamed for air. Water poured out of my mouth as I coughed and sputtered. My body was racked with pain, but I was alive. My brother-in-law, who had been driving the boat, told me later that he had felt a hand on his shoulder though no one was there. That inexplicable touch had prompted him to stop the boat and look back, just in time to see me tangled in the rope. I struggled to swim to the surface. My arms felt heavy, and my leg throbbed with a pain so intense that it nearly blinded me. I reached upward, and to my astonishment, I felt hands under my armpits. For a moment, I thought it was my sister, but when I looked around, no one was there. Those hands lifted me, guiding me upward until I broke through the surface of the water. My sister, who had been swimming toward me with all her might, finally reached me. "Don't look at my leg," I shouted, knowing the sight would horrify her. Of course, she looked. Her scream echoed across the lake as she saw the damage. The tow rope had torn through my flesh, nearly severing my leg. Blood clouded the water around us, and I could feel myself growing weaker. Somehow, she managed to keep her composure long enough to help me. "Cindy," I said, my voice trembling, "I'm going to go into shock. You need to keep my leg elevated and apply pressure." My years of education and first aid training kicked in, even as my body began to fail me. My brother-in-law returned with another boat, and I repeated my plea, "Don't look at my leg." He didn't listen. His face turned pale as he saw the extent of the injury. He tried to get into the water to lift me onto the boat, but I stopped him. "If you move me too much, my leg will fall off," I warned. "Just drag me back to the dock." And that's what they did. When we finally reached the dock, the ambulance was already waiting. Paramedics rushed to stabilize me, administering electrolytes and antibiotics to combat the water I had swallowed. The lake was contaminated with bacteria, and the risk of infection was high. The pain was overwhelming, but I was too focused on surviving to let it consume me. At the hospital, the doctors were astonished by my story. They cleaned and stitched my leg as best they could. But the damage was severe, despite the odds. They told me I was incredibly lucky. The rope had missed vital arteries by mere millimeters. Still, the recovery process would be long and grueling. I was discharged that same day. Much to my surprise, "Go back to your cabin," they said. "Rest. Take your antibiotics. And keep your leg elevated." My family helped me back to the cabin, where I spent the following weeks reflecting on what had happened. The series of events that led to my survival felt impossible. A boat that wasn't supposed to sink had taken on water. A tow rope that should have floated had wrapped around my leg. And the moment I had been dragged underwater, I had experienced something that defied explanation. I kept asking myself, how did this happen? How did I get here? In the first year after the accident, I only shared my experience with a few close friends. I didn't have the words to explain what I had gone through. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a near-death experience. The term NDE was completely foreign to me. All I knew was that I had been to a place beyond this world, and it had changed me forever. Physically, the recovery was brutal. I had no feeling in my calf or toes, and I dragged my leg behind me for months. As a teacher, I was used to moving around the classroom, but now I had to sit still, hiding my limp from my students. At my acupuncture clinic, the nerve pain was so intense that it brought me to tears at unexpected moments. Once, while making a deposit at the bank, the pain hit me like an electric shock. I yelped, startling the teller, who thought I was robbing the bank. It took me minutes to convince everyone that it was just my leg, not a holdup. Emotionally and spiritually, the journey was even more complex. My entire belief system had been upended. Everything I thought I knew about God, life, and the universe had to be reevaluated in light of what I had experienced. It took years to process the magnitude of it all. I eventually discovered groups like the International Association for Near-Death Studies and found solace in sharing my story with others who had similar experiences. Looking back, I see that my experience was what I now call a designer death. It was tailored to me in a way that only the Creator could have orchestrated. Every detail, every moment, felt intentional, as though it had been planned down to the last second. It shattered my understanding of how the world works and replaced it with something infinitely more profound. The love I encountered during my NDE remains the most powerful force I have ever known. It wasn't like the love we experience here on Earth, as beautiful as that can be. It was pure, unconditional, and all-encompassing. It filled every part of my being, leaving no room for fear or doubt. I often think about that love and how it continues to shape my life. Even now, though my body bears the scars of that day, my soul carries the memory of something far greater. And for that, I am eternally grateful. As I lay in the cabin reflecting on my journey, a verse from the Bible often came to my mind, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." Jeremiah 29 verse 11. Those words resonated deeply with me, as though they had been written just for this moment in my life. I began to realize that my survival, my near-death experience, and the immense love I had encountered were all part of a divine plan, one that extended far beyond my comprehension. In the weeks following my return home, I struggled to integrate what I had experienced. The physical scars were one thing, the emotional and spiritual transformation was another. I couldn't look at the world the same way anymore. Every interaction, every moment seemed imbued with new meaning. The ordinary had become extraordinary, and I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility to share what I had learned. One of the clearest lessons I took away from my experience was the power of choice. During my NDE, I had been shown how even the smallest decisions, a kind word, a fleeting thought, carried energy that rippled through the universe. It reminded me of Proverbs 16 verse 9, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." Every choice we make, every path we take, is woven into a greater tapestry that only God can see. But understanding this truth also brought challenges. How could I convey the magnitude of what I had experienced to others? How could I help them see the importance of every moment, every thought? I found myself drawn to teaching in a new way, not just in my classroom but in everyday life. I wanted to encourage people to be present, to recognize the sacred in the mundane. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I thought about the love I had felt during my NDE. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a tangible presence that had enveloped every part of me. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love, 1 Corinthians 13 verse 13. That verse echoed in my heart as I considered how I could bring that love into my daily life. It wasn't enough to simply remember it, I needed to live it. I began to look for ways to share that love with others. I reached out to friends and family, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in years. I volunteered at local shelters and community centers, offering my time and resources to those in need. Each act of kindness felt like a small reflection of the immense love I had experienced. It was as if I were a conduit, passing along a divine gift that was never meant to be kept for myself. Of course, there were moments of doubt and difficulty. There were times when the pain in my leg flared up, when the memories of the accident resurfaced, and I felt overwhelmed. But even in those moments, I remembered Psalm 46 verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Those words became a lifeline, a reminder that I was never alone in my struggles. Over time, I began to speak more openly about my experience. At first, it was with small groups of friends or during quiet conversations at church. But as I saw how my story resonated with others, I felt called to share it more widely. I started speaking at community events and eventually began recording a podcast to reach a larger audience. Each time I told my story, I felt a sense of purpose, as if I were fulfilling the very reason I had been sent back. One of the most profound realizations I shared was the interconnectedness of all things. During my NDE, I had seen how every action, every thought, created ripples that extended far beyond what we could see. It reminded me of Romans 8 verse 28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This interconnectedness wasn't just a concept, it was a living reality, one that called me to live with greater intention and love. As the years passed, I found new ways to honor the experience that had changed my life. I began writing poetry, inspired by the beauty and wonder I had glimpsed during my time on the other side. I traveled to places I had always dreamed of visiting, not just to see the world but to experience the fullness of God's creation. Each journey felt like a step closer to understanding the vastness of His love and the depth of His plans for us. In moments of quiet reflection, I often thought back to the hands that had lifted me from the water, the invisible presence that had guided me to safety. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways, Psalm 91 verse 11. I had felt those angels, not as abstract beings but as real, tangible forces of protection and grace. Their presence was a reminder that God's love surrounds us, even in our darkest moments. As I conclude this part of my story, I want to thank you for listening. Sharing my journey has been an act of faith, a way to honor the love and lessons I was given during my time beyond this world. My hope is that my story inspires you to look at your own life with fresh eyes, to see the divine in the everyday, and to cherish the gift of each moment. If you've found meaning or encouragement in what I've shared, I invite you to follow this channel. Together, we can explore the messages of faith, hope, and love that God has woven into our lives. As Jesus said, I have come that they may have life, and have it to the full, John 10 verse 10. Let's live that fullness together. One moment, one choice, one act of love at a time. Let us take time to pray and strengthen our faith in the glorious return of Christ. In every prayer, we not only express our desires but also listen to His call. Jesus said, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. Matthew 24 verse 42. This is a reminder that we must be spiritually prepared and active, living each day with reverence and faith. Believe that every prayer, no matter how small, reaches His heart. Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you. Matthew 7 verse 7. When we pray, we not only seek guidance but also experience the love and protection of God, who always listens and walks beside us. Thank you for listening to my story. If it has touched your heart, join me as we explore the divine messages of God through this channel. Let us pray together, live fully, and prepare for His return. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death. Revelation 21 verse 4. Remember, God is always with us.